in deep, deep through, and they've been.
Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel News Daily live stream. So happy to have you with us here today. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Sid Fizzard in Calgary here, my fellow colleague, videographer, and friend to myself and a friend to Rebel, no doubt. Lots to cover this weekend, but first I'm going to get through some of the logistics. You may be wondering, where is Sheila? This is the Alberta edition after all. Well, we're lucky to have Sid here from Alberta. Sheila is doing very important work today. She's actually in court covering the Mom's Diner case, which is a Fight the Fines case. So I think court's starting around 9:30, maybe 10. Be sure to follow her. No one live tweets court quite like Sheila, so we will miss Sheila today, certainly, but we're looking forward to hanging out with Sid. Sid, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing as well? We were both pretty busy this weekend. Tell me about yours.
Oh, it was good. You know what? First, let's let people know some of the standard sort of logistics stuff before we get rolling. We have about 1.5 million people on YouTube, and we absolutely love everybody on YouTube. So we're going to hang around on YouTube as long as we can. As we know, we do this live stream daily, and we want to connect with those 1.5 million folks. Unfortunately, as you very well know, we don't have the opportunity to talk about all the important issues that we want to talk about when we are on YouTube. So partway through the day, we're going to hop off that platform and we're going to continue our stream that's going to be ongoing throughout the entire stream on other platforms such as Rumble, Super U, and Odyssey. So if you want to catch the full show, make sure you're hopping onto those other platforms so we don't lose you halfway through. There's also an opportunity there through those networks that support and encourage free speech. Not that they're particularly political. They just, as long as you're not doing anything illegal, they're happy to have people express their opinions. We think that's important. There's an important way for them, and they allow you to support us. You can make a little donation that helps us get these important other sides of the story out there, and it helps us join you every day through a super chat. You basically make a small donation, you make a comment throughout the show, and probably more so towards the end of the show because we have so much to get through. We will read those comments, interact with them. It's a great way for you to support us, and we love to hear from you. It's so much more fun when we're having conversations with the viewers, interacting with you. That's one of the best things about the daily live stream. We see familiar faces and get some real feedback from our viewers. Like I said, there's lots going on. I'm happy to have my fellow Calgary Rebel Sid here. We were both at it absolutely all weekend. But before we get into some of the local Alberta stuff, as you know, this is something like our Alberta edition of the show. There is a lot of stories that we wanted to touch on. I'm also hearing that we're going to be joined not too long by a special guest. He's our boss. So when he wants to come on, we'll jump straight to him so he can keep us posted. First off, I just wanted to quickly touch on this, the vehicle ramming that took place at the Wisconsin Christmas parade. Really a tragic situation. Virtually no details presently beyond the fact that 40 people have been injured, 5 people have died. So certainly our thoughts and prayers go out to those people. As always, we are the source for the other side of the story. We're going to be bringing you updates, written articles, and videos about this to keep you guys updated as soon as we know more information about this. So someone has been taken into custody. Again, details very ambiguous. So we don't want to speculate too much on this, but someone now taken into custody. Ultimately, though, a Christmas event supposed to be something where people come together. Now a community is left in tatters, brokenhearted. Any thoughts on that, Sid?
No, it's just tragic to say the least, and especially just to see what's happened and not know anything about why it's happened is especially hard just to have to see and go through.
Yeah. There's starting to be speculation that perhaps he was fleeing police or something. But again, I'd say it's too early to speculate in great detail about what happened there. Another rather interesting piece of news is an article came out, or rather a quote from a familiar figure. And he effectively suggested that if politicians don't take action, pipelines should be blown up. Do you care to take a guess as to who might say something so radical?
Just by hearing you say that, I would have no idea, but they don't seem well hinged.
Yeah, no, I would say that they are categorically unhinged. And the crazy thing is, you might think that this would be a radical terrorist cell or some sort of activist group or something in a war-torn country in the Middle East. No, it's Canada's very own and beloved David Suzuki, completely off his rocker, apparently. I have a feeling if someone on the right or someone in the conservative spectrum said anything comparable, they'd immediately be arrested on charges. But sadly, the progressive and radical left has been adopted by the mainstream, so he can say that. So we have a clip that we can jump to now. AD said he can pull it up. So we've got a clip of David Suzuki virtually uttering a threat.
Yeah, deep doo-doo, and they've been telling us for over 40 years. This is what we're come to. The next stage after this is they're going to be pipelines blown up if our leaders don't pay attention to what's going on.
The next stage after this is they're going to be pipelines blown up.
Can you imagine, Sid, if like a conservative politician said like these ideological schools that are pushing progressivism, if they don't cut it out, the next step is, and then I won't even say it because it's so ridiculous, uttering some threat. I don't know how the left gets away with this. I don't know how this guy still gets surely a bunch of government money for whatever he's working on. This is wild.
I would add one thing is like, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to be generous in that regard and be like, maybe it's going to be a natural environment thing that blows it up. But that kind of language is, well, I think we're both kind of expecting certain things from it.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I mean, he doesn't actively say, I'm going to do it, but he's like, this is what's going to happen if you're not careful. You know, I have to share a story. This was more than 15 years ago, and it's very much anecdotal, but David Suzuki, shockingly, 15 years ago, was saying the same thing he's saying today. The world is going to end every single day if we don't do something. He got on that probably 15, 20 years ago. I was actually attending, and this was as a naive high school student, I was attending an outdoor sort of event that celebrated, it was like mountain biking, rafting, hunting, archery, that kind of stuff. David Suzuki was a speaker there. And he went on a whole tangent about how like nature is irreparably damaged. There's no hope. There's no hope of recovery. And then he actually went into a story about, and I may get the river wrong, forgive me, but the facts were correct at the time anyways. He said he was on the Kootenay River, and that he had been he paddled that river forever, but the last time he went, he saw no animals. There was no animals to be seen because we had done such damage to nature that even in the middle of the wilderness, there was no animals around because humans were so invasive. I asked him where he had camped alongside the river because there's a few sort of known designated camping spots. And he said he gave me the very specific point where he was camping. Coincidentally, I had been paddling on the Kootenay the prior weekend and I camped where he said he camped. And he was certainly not there. So it's shocking the extent to which, and maybe he got the weekends wrong or something, but it's shocking to which the extent that that they will flat out lie, make up stories, and then now bordering on the outskirts of ushering threats. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully he has the decency to at least respond and say, offer some sort of correction, saying, no, I'm just saying things are getting bad. No one should do that. But I know a conservative would have to issue an apology or be canceled, but he'll probably get away with it scot-free, probably get some more government funding for some kooky project of his. If all the pipelines are to be bombed by environmental activists, we're certainly not going to have some of the amenities we have and enjoy. Among those are included doing laundry. I think most of us do laundry pretty frequently. We're coming on the live stream, got to have a nice shirt on. Speaking of which, we're both representing rebelnewsstore.com products. It's an exceptional time of the year. You got the hat on. I think you got a shirt on. I got a shirt on. For those who don't know, Christmas is right around the corner. It is my favorite time of the year. And if you want to support Rebel News and you also want to get some incredible gear for your friends out there, the Rebel News Store, there is a bunch of Christmas stuff. There's some Christmas promotions. There are some really nice shirts on there that I absolutely love. Some new toques, those nice hoodies. Those hoodies are so comfortable. We use them all the time when we're reporting out in the field. So if you want to support Rebel News, you can roll out. Speaking of doing the laundry, these things wash very well. I'm really tough on clothes. I don't take care of them. I encourage you, turn them inside out when you wash them, but great stuff. There's deals for Christmas right now. If you haven't ordered from the Rebel News Store before, I don't know if there's a SID code, but there's an Adam 10 code. You can get 10% off. So grab some stuff for your loved ones for Christmas. It makes a great gift, and it helps our important journalism and helps us in telling the other side of the story. But the story that I am getting here is that there is a suggestion effectively from the World Economic Forum that fashion needs to change and that we effectively need to do less laundry. Week after week, we talk about the things that climate change can and can't do. Not too long ago, it was climate change was causing chlamydia in koalas. Now, because of climate change, we cannot wash our clothes anymore. Sid, what do you make of this? Just the latest in the never-ending things that we should sacrifice that are basically bastions of modernity, having clean clothes and laundry in the name of environmentalism.
Well, you'll have dirty clothes, you'll eat bugs, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. That's what they want, right? So we're back to mud huts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
I mean, cars too, especially cars. You can't have those.
Yeah. I wonder how many times all these rich eco elites rewear and don't wash their Met Gala wardrobes. I wonder how many uses that goes through. Absolutely unbelievable. Again, just.
And I think this is a good time to mention Louis Brackpool and his coverage of COP26, I believe it was there in Glasgow. And all of the jets that are coming in, hundreds of delegates from around the world. And it's like, you could have done this like what we're doing right now on Zoom, and you would have saved so much of that energy that they're trying to save desperately.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing is I don't care if you want to travel, but the thing is, don't tell me that I can't do a load of laundry when I've got a bunch of kids and I have to wash their clothes. Don't tell me that I can't use a plastic straw, I have to use a paper straw when you have hundreds of disposable drinks. The amount Justin Trudeau drinks on those planes, we know, the amount of energy utilized for this eco initiative that ultimately just generates in taxes going to, or tax dollars or funds going to these eco agencies with very little being done for the environment. It seems to me self-evident anyone concerned with the environment would simply make this online automatically. What's interesting is in religious communities, and this is a bit of a side, religious communities often advocate for, and we've seen this over the past months. We won't get into details on this side of the stream, but religious communities advocate for the need of in-person collaboration and gathering as part of their worship. This only goes to further the notion that the eco movement is very much a religious sort of experience for these people. I know Dr. Joe Vipond, who is a Calgary pro-lockdown and very environmental radical. He says he's scared to death of climate change perpetually. He said there's an importance of us being together. So very much a very religious sense to this, to these types of eco gatherings, certainly.
100% on that front, yeah.
I did want to get into just a little bit the Rittenhouse story. This is a story that is simply not going away. One thing that I found incredibly interesting, and as Sheila always says, my Catholicism will be showing here. It was interesting that his acquittal, being all the charges being dropped, was on the feast day of Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, the patron of the falsely accused. So that was rather humorous for me. A very serious trial, obviously, but unfortunately, some of the ridiculous content and prosecution that went on. Edie can maybe let me know if he has any of those clips available, but yeah, here we go.
As to the third count of the information, unknown male, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
Members of the jury, are these your unanimous verdicts? Is there anyone who does not agree with the verdicts as read? Would you wish the jury polled? No. Okay.
Some of these moments remind us that this is a 17-year-old kid. The emotion when he took to the stand, he's stoic. I mean, the guy, he's like a volunteer firefighter, Boy Scout, like he volunteers and everything. Very sort of stoic for a 17-year-old kid, I think. There are so many interesting humanizing moments, some of them extremely touching like that. But as we know, the prosecution on this story was a bit of a farce. There were also some moments of levity, and I think for people, most of the people who are extremely angry about this did not watch the court proceedings. They don't know the facts about the case. They are outraged, looking for an excuse to be angry and take to the streets. I believe some places were calling for a communist takeover because of course we know in communist countries there is a long tradition of sorry, what's that, AD? Okay, we have the clip of them calling for communism,
and with demand for these slender towers being high.
So maybe a bit of a hang up getting that up while we're working. Oh, here we go.
It's communist revolution, the only solution. It's communist revolution, the only solution. It's communist revolution. That's right, we need communism. That's what we need. We need that. We need that to we need that to save us.
I mean, what do you think? What's your track record on justice and in communist countries?
Well, it hasn't been looking good for the past, 100 years, ballpark it. They don't have a good track record. And I've heard this case being summarized as they now have the right to self-defense. And that's what Kyle Rittenhouse has, the right to self-defense. And it's like, that's what they're protesting against. They're protesting against you being allowed to defend yourself from them, basically. So I'm not surprised they're protesting. They want to be up in arms whenever things don't go their way. So
I think anyone, even my liberal friends who knew the facts of this case, were like, they should have gone after him for a weapons misdemeanor. They tried to throw the book at this kid, and the facts simply don't align. Furthermore, the extent to which the prosecution absolutely, I don't think even with perfect prosecution, they were going to find this kid guilty. But beyond that, there was, first of all, some extremely serious problems on the part of the prosecution. Nominally, the fact that one of the prosecutors pointed a rifle at the jury while stating how dangerous it is with his finger within the trigger guard. I think he's watched too many, I wasn't going to say Alec Baldwin movies, but too many Alec Baldwin movies. But the finger in the trigger guard thing in a jury, and the great irony of it is he's literally saying that this is so incredibly dangerous and this is what you can't do. Absolutely shocking content. What did you make when you first saw those images of a prosecutor pointing a gun at the jury?
Well, I didn't read the headline. As you know, images stick out a little faster. And as soon as I saw that, I stopped for a second. I was like, wait, what are you doing? And I'm not someone who's like, I don't follow court proceedings. I don't follow stuff like that. But I paid a little bit of attention to this, and seeing him do that in the court, just as a nobody, I was like, what are you doing? What's going on here? Yeah. And then not only that, but then there was the drone footage that there was, I believe it was a lower quality that got given out originally. And then after a while, eventually near the very end, they released a higher quality one with more detail as to the situation.
Yeah. So it is absolutely like shocking. I don't know how there isn't some sort of legal consequence for the prosecution. One, I don't know what it is state by state, but in Canada and in most states, pointing a firearm at somebody is assault with a weapon. It's in most states after pointing. So that's breaking a law within court. Beyond that, withholding the drone footage. And the thing with that drone footage, I don't know if you saw it, it clearly, the entire prosecution's argument was, why did Kyle Rittenhouse not attempt to flee? Well, in that recovered HD drone footage, you can clearly see him raising his rifle several times. We have it right here. So he's being chased. He raises his rifle. So that was the very end of it. If we go back a little bit further, he raises his rifle, asks the guy to stop. The guy keeps proceeding. He turns around and runs. I think it's 2 times he drops his rifle again and runs. And he finally fires once he's cornered and is knocked down by someone who's threatened him repeatedly. So the fact that footage, there you go. Yeah, you see him running away from the scene. He raises his rifle several times. Shocking stuff. I don't know how much of the sort of humorous content that you caught, though. For me, watching throughout the court, it just humanized Kyle Rittenhouse to such an extent that he is a kid. For example, one of the accusers, their chair broke in the middle of their Zoom meeting, effectively during pretrial stuff, and fell down, and Kyle had to drop under the desk because it was comedic. Another line, the prosecutor was asking Kyle why he was racing off and what the urgency was, and he said, I was going to put down a fire. And the guy says again, what was so critical? And Rittenhouse says, well, a fire, that's what the emergency is. So I'm hoping people can have their sensibility about them. I know Joe Biden said that he kind of defers to the jury on this until it was probably a moment of lucidity for Joe Biden. Then once, of course, he was redirected, I think he backtracked on that a little bit and apologized. But what do you suspect is going to happen as a result of this? What have you seen so far? And do you think there's going to be more outpouring of cries for vendetta or vengefulness? Or do you think people are starting to read some of the facts and realize that this is maybe not what they were making it out to be?
I think more people are coming to that realization after all of this information has been laid out clearly. More people are looking at that thoroughly and being like, oh, okay, maybe I was duped. But what's going to happen moving forward, I don't know. It truly was a moment that the nation was watching. And of course, you spoke to the one side that they're out protesting en masse, and the other side is celebrating like it's the night of their life, right? So, and I heard one thing where it was, I believe, Nicholas Sandman. I'm not entirely sure, but the one that was smiling as a Native American was banging a drum in D.C., and he just stood there smiling. Yeah, there he is. He apparently had talked with Kyle Rittenhouse, and he said Kyle's spirits were high. And, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but they're standing strong, and maybe they'll. I've heard maybe they should go after CNN or some of these other news agencies that have been falsely reporting on the situation.
Yeah, and the nice thing here is that the prosecution pointing a gun at the jury was very much a metaphor for the broader bringing in National Guard, because if you do the right thing and find him not guilty on all charges and acquit, there is very much a gun pointed at your head. So it was nice to see that despite all of that pressure, the jury ruled. I mean, it took a little bit longer than people suspected. There was a bunch of narratives out there about like lone jurors or hung juries and that kind of stuff. But it was nice to see that justice prevailed. Whatever people may think about it out there, the facts very much speak for themselves. I know Mr. Sandman has done apparently rather well for himself because of the extent of the lies out there. So I think he has received some sizable settlements, and certainly, I mean, this Mr. Rittenhouse is not going to likely be able to live a normal life moving forward. I certainly hope that he is compensated adequately. As we saw, though, protests throughout the streets. Chicago, there's footage up right now in New York. People taking to the streets. And you know what? God love them. If they want to take to the streets and protest peacefully, if I don't agree with them, I think it's vital that they're able to do so. That is the benchmark of a free society. But I hope that authorities, as they would clamp down and lock down if people were breaking the law, damaging property, any of those other things, I hope they hold these protests to the same standards. I've not heard anything so far extremely egregious other than calls for communism, which to the people who escaped communist countries can be truly heartbreaking. But hopefully some sensibility prevails moving forward. We are very much looking forward to welcoming Ezra as soon as he's ready to join us for an exciting update on something. But now we are going to get into that decidedly Albertan content. We were absolutely swamped all weekend. K2 and myself were at the Calgary UCP AGM, the United Conservative Party annual general meeting. This is not as exciting as a leadership race or a campaign, for example, or a full-on election, obviously. But these types of events are important because very often this is how they determine how a leadership race will be won. It is also where the party will adopt policies that ultimately inform what they will be campaigning on. So the membership really gathers. For this year's UCP AGM, they weren't even sure if they were going to be able to have it in person. And they only managed to ensure that they'd have it in person just shy of 4 weeks ago. And they still managed to get 1,600 people to register for this event. So it was a decent turnout. It was nice to be around people as well. Unfortunately, we did have to go through all the PCR testing, and certain politicians wouldn't talk to us if we didn't put a mask on. So there was some of that stuff. But did you hear much about the UCP AGM outside of it? We were kind of inside, so it occupied our world. But I don't know how much people cared in the outside world about what was going on there.
Well, I saw a couple of the videos you'd put out over the weekend. And then there was also, I heard about Artur Pawlowski. He was there. And I interviewed him on Sunday, and he spoke to that event as well. Oh, so I didn't hear too much, but I'm certainly interested in what they're saying on the inside, because right now the Conservatives, they're kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and I mean, you could say the same federally, provincially. There are questions about leadership. I think that perhaps people thought there would be more animosity towards Jason Kenney than there was. We're going to get through some of this UCP content. Lots of it deals with stuff that we can't talk about on YouTube. So we're going to talk for a few minutes about some of the stuff we can, and then we're going to head off. Hopefully Ezra can join us before we depart from YouTube, however. So for this AGM content, one of the big things Friday night, I'll kind of go through sequentially. Jason Kenney effectively sought to bring forward a governance policy that would make it, I know this is kind of boring, but it does matter. It was an attempt to secure a stranglehold on the leadership. So he wanted to make it so instead of just 1/4 of constituencies having to call for a leadership review, that would go up to 1/3. So it would far surpass the current number of seats or constituencies required to call for a leadership review. There were also, and these are not necessarily founded, but a number of allegations that he attempted to fill the room in order to have this motion pass. It was not, however. It was actually defeated. So despite those efforts, now it still will only require 1/4 of constituencies in order to have a leadership review. So this suggests that there is probably a reasonably high likelihood that sooner rather than later, his leadership may come under review. While we were there, we did have the opportunity to talk to Brian Jean, who talked about his leadership bid, and he called for Kenney to resign right away. Danielle Smith was there as well, I believe. We don't know if she was joking or not. She mentioned that she might consider running again. So we might be having a flashback with Jean, Kenney, and and Danielle Smith talking about leadership again in Alberta. So that'd be interesting. What do you make of those names? Are those names jumping out to you? For those who don't know, you're a recent arrival to Calgary, so it's nice to have some outside input on Alberta politics.
Well, let me put it this way. First, I'll speak to Toronto. Toronto, you hear like the main figures that stick out. I mean, you don't really, or at least for myself, I didn't really see the local like municipal ridings and stuff. It was just those popular names that stuck out. But here, one of the first things I noticed is as we were driving in, all of this signage for all these different mayoral candidates and different parties. And there's just so many different groups here in that political arena than it appears that there are in Ontario and Toronto. So that's one thing that definitely stuck out to me. And it's shown me more kind of how and what it takes to be a political party. So it has been a very interesting experience.
Yeah, certainly no lack of, one of the great ironies is there was certainly some sentiment of division within the United Conservative Party. And I think that's true of conservatives in general. Albertans are conservatives. You'll see parties stick around for longer with liberals and remain in power for longer. We saw it for a long time, don't get me wrong, with the conservatives here in this province. But over the last few years, people have been dissatisfied with leadership. So you see a turnover of parties, reforming of parties. It happens federally and provincially among conservatives. So yeah, an astute observation there, one that we don't really think about. We're like, oh, there's always 10 parties. All of them have their own idea. And then someone manages to merge enough of them to become the government for at least a few years. Some of the policies, we'll kind of go good, bad here. So there was a policy to protect freedom of speech, worship, and assembly without government or corporate censorship that was passed. And this is very good because it very much counteracts the federal efforts to censor the internet, to limit gatherings, all that sort of stuff, the ideological restrictions that the federal government, Justin Trudeau particularly, are seeking to impose on Canadians. As reporters, it is nice to know that the party is advancing and protecting freedom of speech and gathering, because clearly we love to get together with our fellow rebels, our rebel viewers. We'd love to meet you in person. So having those gatherings and also not being shut down. Listen, we're not endorsing or allowing hate speech. There's rules in place for all of that stuff. But ideology should not be banned from discourse. There shouldn't just be one idea out there. In fact, even within Rebel, there's a number of ideologies, and we manage to coexist because we believe in respecting each other, freedom, all of that good stuff. Unfortunately, there was also a motion to protect students from basically facing termination or consequences within school based on their beliefs or politics. So we've seen whether it be pro-life clubs or political activism, or Lindsay Shepherd would be a poster child of this. She was a TA, not a student, but we've seen no lack of people being thrown out of schools and punished for their ideologies, their religions, their political beliefs. It seemed a universally, to me anyways, I don't know what you think, but that to me seems like something the Conservatives could have embraced. And unfortunately, that motion failed. I wrote must pass. Like this was like a litmus test for conservatism in the UCP, and it didn't pass. What do you think about that? Do you think that should have been adopted basically unanimously?
Well, for me, at least, I feel like the Conservatives are going through a bit of an identity crisis. So what they're going to speak to next as a unified party isn't something that I could tell you. But what I can say is this whole thing about students having to go through this just to have an education. I mean, it even applies for online learning. So if you want to sit in your laptop at home, away from people, not engaging with anybody, keeping more than 6 feet, but 30 feet from everybody else, you're still being told you have to get this. So that just tells you where their head's at. It's not about health, I would say, but something more aligned with just getting everybody into the same team, so to speak.
Right. The next sort of thing that we talked about was actually two motions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, but they were on the same sort of topic. And it was effectively about healthcare conscience rights. So largely the groups involved were groups discussing things like abortion, euthanasia, but it was a more broad sort of discussion. We won't get into obviously some of the hot button issues about conscience rights until we leave YouTube, but two motions, basically resolutions were on the table. The first one was effectively so healthcare practitioners would never be forced to do something themselves that was consciously objectionable. So not forcing an individual to actually do it. So that motion actually passed successfully. So that was a win for healthcare worker rights. In the afternoon, there's a bit of a more specific motion that further went on to say that they shouldn't be forced to refer to services that they don't feel are good. That motion unfortunately failed. I do understand that is a bit more of a nuanced thing, but if you're told, if you feel morally opposed to something, or as a doctor, if you feel that something is opposed to your patient's best interest, there are serious concerns about being forced to send them to someone in order to do that thing that you're advising that they not do as a medical practitioner. So it's kind of a split day, a minor victory for healthcare workers, but I think it was derived from federal laws. And the UCP's intent was to override those. But yeah, so you doctors, healthcare workers, nurses will still have to refer at the request of a patient on that front. Next up, and this one can be contentious, but there was a motion to have merit-based payment for teachers who are receiving public funding. So basically, for any publicly funded school, rather than the standardized, you work a certain amount of years, you get these raises, and it's all boxed in. The criticism of that system is that there are exceptional teachers who could probably be earning more than they currently are, and take on more problem students and everything. And then on the other hand, there are maybe teachers who are doing this because it's a pretty good paying job and it's not really their passion. For me, one of the things that really shocked me is someone took to the microphone against this motion, and they said, well, like, my son and my daughter are both teachers, so I don't think it should be merit-based. And I was like, what do you think of your son and daughter? Like, I mean, I know lots of people. I happen to be married to a teacher. They're exceptional teachers, and I think they would be happy to be paid on merit because they go above and beyond. So unfortunately, this motion, it's not quite as open and shut as you might think, but I think generally we're inclined towards merit-based payment, and the teachers who are absolutely killing it, doing extra stuff, should be being paid more, and the teachers who are maybe pulling back, not completing some fundamental duties, shouldn't be getting the same amount. It shouldn't just be boxed off. So that motion was defeated. What do you think about that?
Well, that incentive would give teachers a reason to give that extra bit to their students, you know. Yeah. So I think that is unfortunate. Oh, 1 second.
So while he's dealing with that in the background, I couldn't agree more. That incentive is important. Those teachers who are extremely passionate. Sorry, carry on. Covered you for a minute.
Yes, I'm very sorry for that. I do apologize. Yeah, no, I think it's unfortunate that they wouldn't think to implement an incentive structure to allow for teachers to get that little extra bonus if they are giving that much more to their students.
Yeah. And I think that there could be sort of half measures incorporated where there is a set structure, but you have to reach certain milestones. It's not just a number of years. Like, I don't think it has to be as open and shut. I have heard repeatedly, I think even the Canadian Taxpayers Federation advocate for programs like this, so it isn't a flat amount. And when lots of people said that they were anti-teacher, they were saying, no, some teachers should be being paid quite a bit more than they're doing. If they're there early, staying late, doing extracurricular activities, their students are excelling, they're doing more than the minimum required, those teachers should be rewarded. To have this sort of communist mindset that everyone gets the same amount regardless of input and outcomes, I don't necessarily agree with. And then finally, and this will be the last thing I think before we are able to transition over, because the rest of the day we're going to be talking about stuff we can't talk about on YouTube. There was actually a motion, and it was very weird. It was hard to get the details as to what exactly happened, but it was seemingly pulled unanimously. It seemed to be submitted as a resolution in a rogue fashion. So I guess the board, the member of Legislative Assembly, and the president of the UCP unanimously agreed to not vote on this. But it was in our book, and we all read the policy, and it was one I flagged as incredibly interesting. So there's actually a motion or a resolution that the UCP should effectively protect our history, protect our culture in an effort to stand up against wokeism and cultural revisionism. So effectively it amounted to a bill against, or a motion rather, a resolution against cancel culture. And it was inexplicably canceled, which was incredibly bizarre. We ran out. I think I got a phone call from Sheila or something. We're obviously all working. I might have been calling you about something. So I stepped out of the room for 15 seconds and I came back in and they were past the motion. So I had to go back and I'm like, wait a minute, this should have been like a big debate and a count and everything like that. So, but no debate, no count. Just we skipped right past it, and one person took to the microphone saying, "What's going on?" And they said, "Sorry, unanimously, we skipped over it." What does that not speak to modern conservatism? That seems like an open and shut conservative bill, but it does seem like something that Aaron O'Toole, maybe even Jason Kenney's like, well, we don't want to touch this. We don't want to get canceled by cancel culture, so we're not going to talk about cancel culture. Yeah,
and that's the thing is I would say it does stem from the top. I mean, at the bottom rung where you got all of the politicians for every party, not the figureheads, they all do have a diverse set of opinions. But the closer you get to the top, the more you have to find a hard line that they don't want to step over, I would say.
And where do you think that, like you said, they're wavering a little bit. Do you think that's a line in the sand, or do you think they're just trying to determine what the mainstream wants and they'll move that side? We've seen a lot of goalpost moving or line moving as things have progressed. Do you think conservatives have to settle in on where our line in the sand is, where the certain principles are if they want to survive?
Yeah, I think they do have to come to that understanding, and they have to be vocal about exactly what it is that they're standing for. I think there's a lot of talk about the failures of O'Toole right now, and he could have done a much better job at explaining himself and allowing his party members to come up with a unified understanding of who they are. But instead, he, as we've seen, has silenced people, shunned them, kicked them out, doing everything he can to kind of separate people from each other. So. Yeah,
it is certainly unfortunate. Before we leave, Ezra was supposed to join us, but obviously Ezra doing so much, our commander-in-chief, taking care of business right across the board. He may not be able to get here right away. I'm going to tell you very briefly about what he was actually going to talk about, and that is our Viewers' Choice Awards. So this is very much an opportunity for our viewers, and this is not just for the live stream, this is all our coverage throughout the year, to tell us who you think is your favorite person, the person you watch the most, the person you tune into the most, or the person who's made the most difference, maybe. It's an opportunity to go up there and vote. When you go to this website, the list is always going to be randomized. It's going to change every day, so there's no bias. And it's who do you think is the best Rebel News journalist? So you can check in and vote for who you like. It's tough. I'm scrolling through now. I don't know. We have so many incredible people. No one makes me laugh quite like Dave Menzies. Sheila Gunn Reid works just about as hard as anyone. Avi, I think Avi won last year. Avi is absolutely killing it. One of the only voices out of Australia. But I mean, let's also give some love to some of our other people. I mean, Alexa's absolutely killing it. Sid, you've been doing incredible work. Mocha, our head videographer. Some of the behind the camera talent, though, that have absolutely killed it. I'm going to give some love to my cameraman, Kian Simone, some of these other incredible people out there. So go there, vote for your favorite Rebel. We get together, and it's a real honor for us to be able to get some feedback from you. Let us know who you think is the best. Sid, I don't want to put you on the spot, but who are you going to vote for? I'm not actually going to ask that. It's fine. What has been some of the highlights for you this year? What has really stood out? And just encourage people to go to Viewers Choice Awards.ca and let us know.
Honestly, that's very tough. There's just been so much that's been going on from the beginning of this year, even last year. Everything's picked up so much. Yeah, it's really great. I think one of the highlights, it's more of a highlight of multiple videos, is all the weekend coverage and all the protests that we've been to from across the country and across the world now, in England and Australia especially. So I think that needs some recognition as well. All that, because that is the tough work where you're just running around all day. It's 8 hours. You're walking with the crowd sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing to be there and to see the atmosphere and to actually be there to cover those stories. So anybody's on the ground for those, it's good hard work, and everything else that we do, everything behind the scenes, all the writing that goes into it, all the editing. It's a big team, and we all work in unison.
Yeah. Could not agree more. And so often when we are at those events, and we're going to get into these weekend's events very shortly or after we dip off of YouTube, but we're the only media outlet there. A media outlet might show up for 5 minutes and get a shot, but I'm sure you've done it. We do it. You're talking to people as the march progresses. And when there's 7,000 people, then you sprint to the front of the march, and you talk to people again as you follow through. By the end of the day, your feet are sore, but we're so happy and honored to be able to be out there bringing you these other side of the stories. As we know, Avi obviously has been covering tons of these stories, even got some flack from Australian broadcasters for putting himself in the middle of it. Heaven forbid journalists would insert themselves into a story so that they can report on it accurately. I think that might be a key part of what journalism is, but some people have forgot that. So go to viewerschoiceawards.ca. Let us know who your favorite rebel is. We love this kind of feedback, and it's a real honor for whoever wins the Viewers' Choice Award to know that we're so loved by you. So we really encourage you to vote viewerschoiceawards.ca. On that note, now that we have talked about that, we unfortunately do have to say goodbye to our 1.5 million beloved viewers on YouTube, but we don't actually want to say goodbye. We want to say see you on Rumble, see you on Odyssey, see you on superu.net. We're looking forward to continue the stream and talking about some of the extra spicy stuff that doesn't fly on YouTube. AD will let me know when we're clear, and we'll carry on.
Bye-bye, YouTube.
Off YouTube?
No, I was saying bye-bye to